All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of The Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck, and I'm along with my coworker, Jordan Bianchi. We are motorsports writers for The Athletic, and today we're here to talk about the Martinsville Speedway race. Jordan is live at Martinsville Speedway, and I don't know what we thought was going to happen, but I don't know if that was exactly what people were predicting. Jordan, how's it going there? What's up?
It's good. This was, in a way, it was kind of like traditional spring Martinsville. Like it felt like the kind of the race we've seen the last few years with this car. There wasn't much to it. It certainly wasn't anything like the Xfinity Series race, though I don't think anyone expected that to be. And it kind of felt like old times in a way, because Denny Hamlin was back in victory lane celebrating at a track that he hasn't won on in 10 years, but he's had a lot of success at.
Yeah. So why? Okay. So we talked about, okay, they brought this new tire to Martinsville last fall. It seemed to be successful. And then, it seemed like, hey, we saw the tires falling off today. The whole side of the cars were all covered in tire rubber. But ultimately, as you said, it was sort of the typical spring race where it seemed pretty hard to pass. We heard Chase Elliott talking on the TV broadcast afterward the race, talking about how he felt like once he lost control of the race in stage 2 and wasn't able to pass Denny by the end of that stage, I think is what he said, that was pretty much the race in his mind. And we saw the top 50, the top 10 with 50 to go, except for Logano, who had 42 lap fresher tires. It did not change one bit except for that. So, it was sort of like, we thought maybe the short tracks were making some progress there, but I would say this was sort of the dud race of the year so far in a season that's had some very good, excellent racing to start.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the first 6 races of this year I thought were largely good, competitive moments that maybe in those races that weren't the best, but overall very competitive and entertaining. This from green flag to checker flag was easily the worst of the year, if you want to call it that. It seemed like it was a struggle today for whatever reason. Guys can pass, and it's confounding because you go back to last fall here, and I thought we saw a terrific Martinsville race. You had all of the drama. You had Ryan Blaney making the charge late. You guys could make moves that look like a classic Martinsville race in a sense, and then for whatever reason today, it's completely different, which seems to be the case if you look at this tire in this car combination on short tracks. Like you go to Bristol and you have massive tire wear. The next time you go back, nothing. And it's just, you don't know what to expect. So, do you just shrug your shoulders and go, that's just the way it is? And the way the cookie crumbles sometimes is you're not going to have, every race can be a barn burner and it is what it is. Or do you go back to the drawing board and say, listen, we got to keep cranking on this. We got to figure out a way to get even more tire wear and softer compound tires and figure out how to make this better. I don't know what you pull from this race and say, this is what we need to do.
So I pride myself, Jordan, on not backtracking from my opinions. And even if I'm wrong.
No, really? I didn't know that. Really? No.
So I think I'm ready to already backtrack possibly on one of them, which is this. After Phoenix, I was like, nah, the drivers don't want this option tire. They don't, in terms of, they don't want multiple compounds for a race.
Yeah.
On DBC, Freddie Kraft says, hey, why is that? I mean, the racing, that made it pretty good. And we thought Phoenix was entertaining because of that aspect of it. Right. So, the drivers are very convincing and they're saying, look, we just want a tire that falls off, a tire that wears. But then you see a race like today. Okay. You had this softer tire, but we didn't necessarily see the passing. I get why the drivers don't want to introduce that element of randomness or weird strategy or weird timing into it. But for the rest of us, I'm kind of like, man, this race would have been a hell of a lot more entertaining today if you had different tire compounds, right? With guys really rocketing their way through the field. What am I missing here? I'm ready to go on your side.
Yeah, imagine Joey Logano on that final run with option tires, presuming he had them sitting in the pits, and then how he would have managed that. I think there's something to be said for this, and I think overall you always have to be careful going along with what drivers want. Because I think for the most part, I will say that what drivers want doesn't always equate to the best product. And there's many examples of that. And in this case, like opening up the playbook on a track where, it's maybe you need to have more passing, and it's hard to, all of these different circumstances to make it a race that is not as entertaining as it could be. Why would you not want to have that playbook? So welcome to the dark side. You do need option tires. I would have them here. I would certainly have them at Richmond, and I would honestly have to keep them at Phoenix too. And I'm not saying you need to have them every week, but it's certainly something to keep in the playbook. And on tracks where, for whatever reason, passing is problematic, and maybe Goodyear can figure it out, and you can develop a tire that is softer. But there are limits. At some point, you're going to hit that threshold of like, we can't make a softer tire any more than it is, for various reasons. And so at some point, you're going to have to look at something else. And we've talked about so much on this show. You can only do so much with the car. Like this, the car is the car at this point. Like, I mean, you've pulled all the levers, it feels like. So tires is the way to go. And if option tires are it, then so be it. I don't see the problem with it. We saw what happened at Phoenix. We saw what happened at Richmond. Those were good races as a result of it.
I mean, you can't have this banger start of a season and then get to race 7 at Martinsville, which used to be one of the most reliably entertaining race of the year, and then go, that's a stinker. I mean, this spring race at Martinsville, in the 3 next gen races, I was just looking at the good race poll. This spring race at Martinsville has not scored above 37% on the yes side since the next gen car debuted. So three races now. It's like, in the fall race, I think it gets masked in some ways because you have the playoff drama on top of it, the win and you're in, the people trying to make the final spots, all that stuff.
Sure.
And in general, though,
the desperation adds to it there.
Yeah, for sure. And we thought the tire last fall made it a good race in general, but man, it's just like, if you're going to convince me that the softer tires are better because they wear out, great. But if everybody's wearing out at the same time and at the same rate, then you still really can't pass anyway. I mean, at the end of stage 2, was it? Chase Elliott was trying to track those guys down, Bubba and Denny, I think, with I think he had 53 lap fresher tires, and he made up spots, but he couldn't get there in the end. So Logano did make up some spots again with 42 lap fresher tires at the end. He got up to 8th place, but shouldn't they make like way more of a difference if this is like the big solution or something? Like, short track racing shouldn't be this far off to me. Like this was the bread and butter. It still needs some work after what I saw today.
It does need work. Absolutely. But I go back to, like, people have this misconception of what Spring Martinsville used to be. Like, drivers used to routinely lead 200, 300 laps here and just kick everybody's butt, and they would run away. We saw that. So on one hand, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like, you need a softer tire, unquestionably. And I would consider the option tire. But I also I'm not up in arms going, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. Like, this is what sometimes this race is here. This isn't always the most exciting track, but I would like to see more passing. And it felt like times today where guys got bogged down, the leaders did in traffic, and you couldn't make a move like you could in years past. And that has to change.
Well, Jordan, a lot of people are going to be listening to this going, man, same people, well, at least me. I don't know what you said about the Xfinity race, but same guy who said the Xfinity race was garbage and embarrassing because there was too many cautions and all this stuff. Now he gets a clean finish with a long run and all that stuff, and he's complaining about that too. Man, this guy's never happy.
Well, yeah, that's fair. That's very accurate.
I don't think it is fair. I would present to you, friends, that there's a big gap between the Xfinity race and what we saw in the Cup race. There's a pretty big gap there. I have no idea what you thought of the Xfinity race because we haven't gotten to talk about it yet. It was obviously the hot topic of the weekend, whatever you think about this Cup race. And we'll go back to Denny Hamlin's win and all that stuff. But this is the pressing issue. This is what it's going to be on Sirius this week, I'm sure. all that kind of stuff is going to be the talk about the Xfinity race. So what was your impression of the race? Does something need to be done about it? You are Team Chaos. So what's your take?
It crossed the line between chaos is fine, but this was far exceeding that line. This was, as Christopher Bell said after, today, embarrassing. This was a disgrace. It was bad. I'm all for hard racing. I like short track racing. Short track racing is putting a fender to someone sometimes and moving them out of the way. And that's okay. But this was unacceptable to this level. And it's not even just how the last few laps ended. It was even before that. I would have said the same thing with 20 to go. This has to be changed. I don't know the solution though. Does NASCAR is the idea that NASCAR needs to come down and start black flagging people? Like, maybe, I would thought that people would have gotten the message that NASCAR wasn't okay with this after Austin Dillon had his win taken away last, fall at Richmond. And that if you are over the top with your aggressiveness, you're going to be penalized. That doesn't seem to have registered at all, which is surprising. I don't know how you police this. I guess you just are going to have to start issuing black flags and penalties. And there's going to be times where there's going to be a lot of hand wringing and going, this is not short track racing, blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, I can't believe we're doing this. But I don't know how else you can get a message across than coming down hard on people, especially repeat offenders. Because that's the thing that really stood out to me, is it seems like there was a handful of drivers who repeatedly were in the middle of this, causing things. And it's like there was just kind of like, whatever, it is what it is. That has to change. The repeat offenders really need talking to. But what?
Who? That's the problem.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem, though. Is like, we saw that like social media, like somebody said, I think it was Mark Martin or something like that. It was like a Jack Ingram, back in there isn't a guy. Is that a Justin Allgaier? But like, does anybody care? Like, does any of the drivers who are the repeat offenders, like, they're just like, whatever, I need to do what I need to do because I need to, win races or finish well or whatever. Like, I don't think it matters. I really don't. Does that mean cup drivers, like veterans who've been around for a long time, need to go walk in the Xfinity garage and start grabbing people and say, listen, I'm sitting you down and we're going to talk about this? I don't know. Honestly, I think the best thing to do is probably publicly shaming them, like on the broadcast, calling them out repeatedly and saying like, okay, what the hell is he doing here? Here's public enemy number 1. Here's public number enemy 2. Like, I think that's probably the best way to do it outside of black flagging them, because I don't know how you fix this. What are your solutions?
I think there's so many layers to this discussion. It's very nuanced, right? And I don't want to conflate what happened during the race with the finish specifically, because I think those are sort of two different things in terms of NASCAR officiating, right? Like, during the race, you see a lot of people just running each other over, but I'm not sure that it's stuff that arise to NASCAR penalty level without essentially changing the essence of the sport. Because
short track, yeah.
We saw Denny on X call for avoidable contact penalties, but if you start doing that, that opens up a pretty big can of worms. And you get a lot of you put a lot of it in the officials' hands where they miss some. They do call this one. You bring up the whole inconsistency thing again. Denny, it seemed like on X, is hoping that it sends a message, and then they'll stop doing it if one person gets penalized. I think you could calm it down for a little bit, but I don't know if that really changes the way they race now. So in that aspect, because the thing is, like, all these guys, when they say, they're essentially like, I don't like it at all, obviously, right? But when they're saying, if I don't do it, it's going to get done to me. Somebody else is going to do it if I don't race like this. If I don't make it 3 wide, somebody else is going to make it 3 wide or 4 wide or whatever it is, right? So they are saying, well, everybody else races like this, so I have to race like this. And if that's going to be the case, let's say somebody wants to be this noble person. Well, I'm not going to do that, right? Like,
they're going to lose.
Are they not getting moved out of the way? So that's a problem. Number one. Number two, the finish of the race, though, specifically with Sammy Smith and all that, that is where I think NASCAR could come in. I don't think that, I saw that Bob tweeted they're going to look at it this week for a possible penalty. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I don't think it's right to officiate that move on Tuesday and go back and say, well, after looking at that, we didn't like that, and we're going to do what? I don't know. What do you do at that point? You're not going to suspend him for that.
No.
So to me, if you see, I'm talking about specifically the leader of the race at the end of the race. I mean, here you had Taylor Gray. He's about to try to win his first race. Sammy Smith sails it on in there. And yeah, he's saying that, well, it's retaliation, or it was even, or whatever it was. Whatever the case may be, that was too far. Getting to the sort of Austin Dillon line of like, you shouldn't be able to win a race that way. He obviously didn't win. So, but you still have to be able to do something. So that's where you go, okay, we'll put somebody at the tail end of the lead lap, or we will give somebody a 1 lap penalty and dock them, move them back, something like along those lines. And you do that in the moment at the track, right? You say,
Sure.
we didn't love that. This is not how, you can't do that. And so, you're going to the back, or whatever it is, right? That's the penalty in the moment. But to wait and, do it Tuesday with sort of it'd be one thing if NASCAR came out and said, okay, guys, after looking at Martinsville, we thought this has gone too far. And from now on, this has been the warning. And from now on, you will see this from us. You should expect us to react in the situation. If you just say, hey, Sammy Smith, that same thing. I mean, Ty Gibbs just did that a couple years ago at the same track, and nothing happened to him. Now you're getting suspended. He's gonna be like, what?
It's a jump.
And yeah, so go ahead.
But then like I look at Austin Hill, and I don't begrudge Austin Hill for being aggressive coming out of turn 4. He shoved his way in there. Like, I worry about what that line is about. You want guys to be aggressive to degree, because that is what sometimes short track racing is. And sometimes moving a guy, putting a bumper to someone, that's part of it. That's always been a part of it. And so like, I worry about how you police this into what is the line of like, that is too far. Is it just when you dive bomb a guy? Is it in Austin Hill's case, and maybe it's a little much, but if you start shoving somebody out of the way and then they lose control and they bounce into someone else and then a chain reaction happens, like what, to what degree do you stop and say, listen, there's only so much we can do here. Like we don't want to fundamentally change what short track racing is. I don't know how you do that, because I think you have to be very, very careful about opening up a Pandora's box and how you do this. Because we saw it today, and the Cup guys are obviously on a much higher level than the Xfinity Series guys, but they run cleaner, they run more respectful, they run all, they're just better overall. But this also wasn't the most entertaining race, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would have been like, I wouldn't have mind seeing some guys shoving each other around a little bit. Now, I don't want to go full Xfinity Series, but give me a little bit of that, right?
Well, I mean, you did have that today. I mean, you had 10 cautions, the most in the next gen era at Martinsville.
But it wasn't anything. It wasn't anything juicy. It wasn't anything like, wasn't like, I don't know. It didn't have that flair.
To your point, though, I think that I don't think it's that hard. I think it's actually fairly obvious. Somebody just nudging somebody out of the way in the last corner, the last lap or something, is full contact NASCAR stock car racing. And that's where the fans could boo, but that's legal. That's fine. When you go into, turn 3 from 3 car lengths back and have no intention of actually making the corner yourself, and are going to run in there until you hit the car in front of you and just knock him out of the way. That's where, like, that's over the line, right? Like, to just clean out the leader and say, hey, I have no regard for letting you race this back. I'm simply going to knock you out of the way no matter what. That I think crosses the line to me. So,
well, here's the other part.
I don't. Okay.
So real quick is, we go back to last fall. It took them 28 minutes, whatever, to make a decision after the race. 28. I don't want to repeat of that. Like, if you're going to go down that road, and that's fine. Like, you have to clean up the Xfinity series. You cannot continue down this path. You have to do something. I don't want to sit around. I don't want races to conclude and everybody's sitting there on pit road for nearly 30 minutes of like, oh man, how are they going to rule on this? Like, it almost has to be instantaneous. Like, you can't. You have, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to make this quicker and in the moment instead of this drawn out process of going back and looking at everything. And I don't know if we're ready for that yet. I don't know if NASCAR is ready for that yet.
I think NASCAR has said, I think Elton Sawyer has said that after last fall that they've been empowered to make those decisions faster from the tower, that they know racing and that they should be able to, on the spot, make that call. And I do think that that's the case. I don't think that they need to, have the entire NASCAR leadership involved in something like this. If it is, again, as we've talked on this podcast before, when you see it situation. And I just think it's not going to be, you're not going to have to wait 28 minutes. If Sammy Smith, let's say he had won that race the way he did, like instead of wrecking himself, let's say he had won that race by cleaning Taylor Gray out, and you go, ooh, everybody would immediately go, that's no.
I hope so.
Right. So there it is. You go, okay,
to me,
you can't do that. You're tail end of the lead lap. Next car wins. That's
I agree. I agree with you. And I hope that's the case. But I also go back to last fall, and it was fairly obvious to everybody watching that race what had transpired. Like we had seen it, so like it should have been a boom boom call then, and it wasn't. Maybe that's the catalyst.
Well, but there was two incidents though. Last fall. I mean, that you had what they were trying to sort out last fall, obviously, and I get it. It should have been faster, but you had the race manipulation on Chevrolet part, defending for Byron,
and then you had the Toyota,
and then you had the Bubba thing, and then ultimately Bell riding the wall, to out of desperate, he panicked or whatever, right?
Sure, but it was fairly obvious on both accounts. Like, it wasn't like, even in the moment, like it was like, okay, and you can go back and quickly look at that data, and again,
but they never penalized. They never penalized the race manipulation in the moment. They only penalized Bell in the moment, right?
Yes. But again, like, you're going to have these moments though. Like, you can't, to your point, you don't want to wait until Tuesday. You don't want to wait 30 minutes. It has to be when somebody's watching a race, and it has to be within minutes of, okay, this is what happened. This isn't good. We're throwing this out. Like, it has to be instantaneous, and that's where I get concerned. Is like, if NASCAR wants to go down that road, awesome, great. Let's start doing that. But make sure you're prepared then to do that, so we don't end up with everybody sitting on pit road twiddling their thumbs going, oh man, what are they going to do here?
Yeah. And I think they would be, but it sort of has to come out as like an announcement or a precedent setting way where everybody knows, okay, going forward, this will be it, or this is what the policy will be. Because it is too murky right now. Remember how we talked to so many drivers after the Austin Dillon situation at Richmond last year. Well, what does this tell you? What does this mean about what you can do at the end of the race, right? And a lot of drivers said, we don't know. A lot of drivers said, we think that it means that you can't clean out two people at the end of the race. You get one shot, but not two. Is that the case? We don't hear that from NASCAR because they don't want to put themselves in a box. So they don't come out and say, all right, well, now we'll give you, you can't do two, you can have one. If they say you can have one, then that means Sammy Smith, had he won that race, that move would have been legal. So, but I don't know that that's the right thing to do. So I think I think there's so many smart people who know racing in the sport. And if everybody just uses common sense, we saw flashes of it last year where, that we started to see 2-lap rough driving penalties be put into place during races. How come this isn't a rough driving penalty? That is a rough driving penalty. That should be like what Sammy Smith did. Oh, rough driving. Okay. It's simple, right? So just know it when you see it, trust your gut.
Devil's advocate here a little bit. On the restart going into there where Gray was told by his team to pay him back, to race Sammy Smith like he raced you, and he intentionally moved Sammy out of the way. Like, I mean, is that okay then? Because he gets his one. But when a team is literally instructing a driver to race the guy in front of you, for lack of a better term, dirty, like, are we okay with that? Because that's what transpired yesterday. And that's where it gets murky.
I think bump and runs are fine.
But what
I mean, bump and runs, moving somebody out of the way at a short track to get the position. Well, isn't that NASCAR? I mean,
I think so. But what ends if that guy that you bump and run ends up losing his car and spins out and wipes out a bunch of cars? Then it's like, well, then that guy just caused a big accident.
It's an art. So you better not.
But
you
not
got
always.
to come with the consequences. So
I mean, sometimes the guy in front of sometimes there's just a lesser talented driver who can't hang on to his car, and that happens.
We do have a interesting note here, as this has just happened live. No issues for Denny Hamlin, but Eric Jones has just been disqualified from the race. Yeah. He had finished 24th. So he was a lap down. He must have been a random, I guess.
Yeah. It was funny because I was walking in here to do the show and I looked in the garage and the 43 car was still over there and they were going over it. I'm like, that's really odd. They don't usually keep the 24th place car in the garage. And it's like, that's not right. Something's afoot here. So makes sense.
Yes, that'll be a points hit for him as he loses his points for the day. Anyway, lots more to come on this. I'll be interested to hear what people think, during the week in terms of what can be done to, clean up this style of racing as a whole. Because look, this has been an issue in the truck series, certainly. Now the truck series has kind of been on a heater in terms of like having much cleaner races, better races, for the most part. They have been, well, I mean, they've been going on a run there where it was like, okay, truck series seems to be getting cleaned up. So I don't know, again, what the solution is. I just think it's sort of ingrained in the culture right now of, I thought Kyle Petty, I went back, I'm sure a lot of people saw the clip of Kyle Petty on Kevin Harvick's podcast, but I went back and listened to like the whole clip, and it was very well said by Kyle Petty. So check that out. I mean, just in terms of how we got here, how NASCAR got here to this point where people don't really care, and they'll just run each other over, and they think that's what they're supposed to do, and that's what the fans want. So, again, I don't think there's a veteran at this point that would have the impact to be able to say, hey, do this or I'm going to kick your butt. I mean, maybe if you get the security people out of the way, if you're going to have a self-policing garage, then let the drivers talk it out and punch each other in the face or whatever you need to do. Because when you're keeping them apart and you're not going to suffer the consequences either way. No. You're not working on your own car. You're not going to get punched in the face. You're going to get shamed on social media or something. Yeah. Okay.
Just turn off your mentions.
You're not going to get fined or penalized by NASCAR. So Sam Mayer running through people or whatever, people are like, oh, he's a weapon. Oh, what does he care? You know what I'm saying? Like I've even seen people saying, well, Dale Jr. should park Sammy Smith for a race. I don't think that's on the team owners to do it. If the series is saying, if the series is like, this is legal, we're not penalizing this, the team owner is going to go, nah, yeah, I'm parking you. I didn't like that personally. I mean, you can talk to the driver, but what are you supposed to do? I just don't see. You either have to decide what you want to be as a series and start penalizing it, or send a message another way that, hey, we're going to let you guys have confrontations and talk it out after the race or punch each other in the face. Right now, they've been really jumping in really quickly. Holler Talk had the head of security this week where they talked about how, they really try to discourage the drivers from getting themselves in those situations and calm down and all that stuff. And so, I don't know what the answer is, but what?
They let them have a confrontation to some degree. I mean, you go back a year
You
ago,
had the video last night from outside the care center. They didn't even let them get close to each other
because they would have been punches thrown. So you're just going to let them start throwing punches? Like at some point you have to like.
Yes. Okay. If you do something and you get punched in the face for it and you go,
and also you're not going to have that. You're also not going to have that outside the care center. Like, because it also started in the care center, by the way. The confrontation actually started in the care center because both of them were there. I witnessed it and they started screaming at each other. Like that is not the place. And I know it sounds weird, but like you can't have that outside the care center. And also you can't, and I say this because I'm okay with fighting, but you have to be careful of guys just going at crazy. Like at what point do you step in and like, oh, we let them throw, you get 2 punches. At what point do you step in? You know?
Probably after somebody's on the ground, like in hockey.
But they let them have confrontations. Like last night would have gotten ugly. I mean, I'm telling you, they would have gotten ugly if they did not keep them separated.
Okay, so then maybe they don't do that again, or one of them doesn't do that again. They're like, well, I'm going to get in a fight if I do this. So isn't that how racing has been? Like over the years, over the decades, you do something, you're at a short track, you get punched in the face, and you decide whether that's something you want to be involved in.
No one punched Earnhardt Cup, really, and he kept doing what he's doing. I mean, I don't know.
All right. Well, Denny Hamlin did win the race today. We are over 30 minutes into the podcast, and we haven't talked about the race winner, so I guess we can do that. Denny Hamlin wins career race number 55. I didn't realize this till he pointed out afterwards at the same race at the racetrack that Rusty Wallace won his 55th career and final race. So he ties Rusty Wallace now for 11th on the all-time list. As you know, by listening to Denny, he is very much trying to get 60 wins before he retires. So he's 5 away from that now. He also had not won in nearly a year, over 11 months. His last victory was Dover last April. And so he wins at Martinsville now for the first time in 10 years. It's his 6th Martinsville win, his first win with new crew chief Chris Gale, and he leads 274 laps out of the last 275. So quite the statement. What do you make of this? What message you take from what you saw here with Denny Hamlin winning this race today?
It's a throwback Denny performance. I mean, dominating it at Martinsville, controlling the race, making the right moves, never really seriously challenged. And I thought he had an interesting comment afterwards about how he appreciates this more, the opportunity to be in victory lane with the team and to have it with his family and have them there. And, stepping back from that, he's at an age, and I hate to be the guy harping on this, but it's true. Like he's at an age 44 where you look at some of his contemporaries and the winning stops real quick. And, we don't know when that last Denny Hamlin victory is going to be. And I did the numbers. I got something coming on The Athletic later. And Martin Truex Jr.'s last win, age 43. Jimmy Johnson's last win, age 42. Jeff Gordon's last win, age 43. Now, there are other examples on the other side. But the point being, for all of those three, Truex, Gordon, and Johnson, I think we all agree, like when they won what ended up being their last race, we never thought it was going to be their last race. Jimmy Johnson wasn't that far removed from a championship. Truex had opportunities, and they had, and it wasn't just like lack of skill, or sometimes there's bad luck involved, or whatnot. But the point is when you're a veteran driver at this point of your career, you just don't know, and so you have to cherish them a little bit more.
I think Denny put his tire conservation skill on display today as he pulls away from Christopher Bell by 4.6 seconds. We saw a moment there where Christopher Bell was really racing hard to possibly try to get around Hamlin early in, I think it was the final run. And, I think I kind of understood what Bell was going for there, because it's like, if you get clean air, control the race, even if you've used up your tires a bit, you're going to have quite an advantage, even over Denny, who can save his tires so well. So I think, that moment there where Denny was able to hold him off, that played a big part, because Denny pulled away late. Bell, clearly did have a good run, though. Did have a good car. This was sort of the race that Bell needed last fall to not have, be so far back in the muck. and just have a good, clean run. I mean, ultimately, Toyota's finished 1, 2, 3. Bubba, another great run. Bubba up to actually, did Bubba lose a spot in the points today? That's so weird. I guess maybe stage points. Bubba 8th in the points now. But it's he's continuing to have good runs. I honestly thought that maybe Chase Elliott was the best car. I thought we talked about Chase Elliott just last week. Oh man, what's going on with Chase Elliott? This was a great day, I thought, for Chase Elliott. As he noted, he just lost control of the race. Ends up finishing 4th, and Kyle Larson kind of, their strategy didn't seem to help them out a couple times. He ends up 5th, but ultimately, when you look at the standings now after 7 races, the entire top 10 of the standings is Hendrick Motorsports, 2311, JGR, and Team Penske. Nobody else is in there. And actually, Alex Bowman is tied with Christopher Bell for 4th, which in theory would make Hendrick Motorsports 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the standings. So what do you make of the top 5 finishers there? Bell, Wallace, Elliott, Larson.
Wouldn't Bell get the tiebreaker over Bowman?
He does. That's what I'm saying. He's essentially tied. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
So, I mean, this is what we talked about last week, where we have it's this separation of these 3 or 4 teams. Let's throw 2311 in there, and it's clearly a gap. And I was asking people this weekend about that, of why we've had this separation, and it's just they're bigger organizations. They've been doing this for a long time. It's a lot of contributing factors, but it has definitely, you're starting to see it a little bit now as these teams have this car for more years and they're getting familiarity with it a little bit. They understand what works and what doesn't. There hasn't been a ton of rule changes over the off. There wasn't any rule changes over the off season. And so because of that, you're starting to see this a little bit of the elite teams are pulling away a little bit. Whereas, we once had the track houses, were able to kind of punch above their weight class. RFK at times was able to punch above their weight classes. And they still occasionally do, but nowhere near to the consistency that they do. And then someone else made this point as well. Look at their driver lineups for these teams. You got Chase Elliott, William Byron, Kyle Larson, Hamlin. I mean, so on and so forth. These are some of the best. These are they're super uber talented drivers, largely across the board, where they should be doing these things. So it's just, you've added this all together, and this is what it is right now, where you've got these 4 elite teams, and then there's a pretty good gap, it feels like, between them and everyone else.
So NASCAR Insights, Russell from NASCAR Insights sent us some of their new data. First of all, I got to give a shout out to our buddy Auto Racing Analytics, Grant from Auto Racing Analytics. I feel like he was sort of pioneering this, these stats that have come out now, and that NASCAR is, they have their own formula for them. They're doing the same kind of concept where you have defense, speed rating, long run, short run, clean air, dirty air, restart, all that stuff. I've been seeing this on Auto Racing Analytics for a few years now. And so I think he's been doing a great job with that, but NASCAR Insights also putting it out. And one thing that they sent, I noticed that, Chase Elliott, I mean, when you look at the best passer of the day, he has the highest rating there, but once he really struggled on restarts, it looks like today. I think he was ranked 19th on restarts. According to this, he was the best passer, and he was the best car in dirty air, but he lost some spots on restarts, and his pit crew was 14th. So that hurt him. Denny was number 1 overall on long run, short run, clean air, speed. So interesting new metrics that are coming out after the race. But I just think, man, it's when you have these races where track position still matters so much, it can come down to something way early in the race. And I think all the guys know it too. Like, you looked at Kyle Larson's post-race quotes, and he was talking about, he was almost kind of saying whoever was sort of going to be getting out front there could own the race. And I think that's what Hamlin did. So even though Denny had a great day, I don't know what this tells us for the rest of the season going forward, other than Denny's still Denny. And of course, when he gets an opportunity, he can get it done.
Yeah, he's still an elite driver, still capable of winning. And it solidifies the fact that this team is going to be in the playoffs and, punches their ticket, that kind of thing. The interesting thing too about the stats is, Bubba Wallace talked about it after the race, is he's typically one of the best restarters. Today, he struggled with that. The stats back that up. And he also, I thought, had a really good car at times, but it was track position game. And the spots you lost on the restarts, it's hard to make that up. And so that it was interesting to see how this came together, but it's like, and a race where you really needed to be perfect across the board in every facet, Denny and the 11 team were largely it.
Just for the record, this at least the Racing Insights data has Bubba 4th best on restarts.
Well, there you go.
I don't think he was that bad.
Well, he was beating himself afterwards. So
yeah, no, I heard that. He said that on the TV broadcast as well. The back half of the top 10, you've got Ross Chastain, who made a few more friends today. It seemed like out there. Including Joey Logano in a clip I saw Bob post. Ryan Preece, who you've been talking about it. Oh my gosh, Ryan Preece. And I've been skeptical. Another great run for him. He
3 straight top 10s.
Yeah, 3 straight top 10s. He was 7th today, and he is now up to 14th in the point standings. And Chris Buescher fell 2 spots to 11th today with his rough day after he had the issue with Noah Gragson where he just gotten too hot and jumped the curb or whatever that was. But yeah, Ryan Preece, man, you knew he could do well at Martinsville, and he delivers there. Joey Logano finally gets his first top 10 of the year. Long awaited. Didn't look like it was going to happen for a while, but he takes the tires late and is able to get up through the field. Chase Briscoe seemed to have sort of a up and down type day, but finishes 9th. And Todd Gilliland finishes 10th over Ryan Blaney, who, if you had told me Ryan Blaney would not get a top 10 at this track with nothing really going wrong in terms of like a wreck or some big issue or something, I would have been like, absolutely not. He's a lock for the top 10. He's probably going to win. So that was surprising. What do you make of the back half of the top 10 there?
Ross, I thought, did a really good job today of pushing a car that didn't seem like it had a lot of speed in it and maximizing that, which is something that I feel like they've done a good job of. Homestead aside, where they were just completely off. Logano, we've talked a lot about him. He's had speed this year, but not the finishes to go along with it. Had that today. Blaney, this was kind of the first quote unquote off race, which is, when you even like, we're talking, if to finish where he did and still not have a great day, it's like that tells where they're at. Their problem starting qualifying though. They started 32nd, and it's just an uphill battle from there. And they flipped the strategy at one point early on. They got a caution. A lot of people pitted. They didn't, but they just never were able to maintain it. He never liked his car, never handled the way he liked it. The Penske cars, if you look at it, typically spring Martinsville, they're not the best. I mean, it's typically been a Hendrick heavy track. They've won the last 3 here before today. The Penske cars typically shine at the latter part of the year. Overall, though, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Austin Syndric had a really bad points day. We talked about Austin Syndric. He was the highest Penske car in points, actually. I know, owner points wise, because he had that penalty, don't forget, for the incident. And so he came in 7th in owner's points, and it was overlooked. But today that he took a big hit, that's, for now, a guy who's had a points penalty and then finished last today, I believe. That's a huge spot for him.
Well, they had the same battery issue, and then did Penske run out of batteries or something?
Yeah, they ran out of batteries because Josh Berry had a battery issue, and obviously Syndric did. So they just had, I don't know.
Is that what happened? Because I saw that on social media, but I never saw that confirmed. They ran out of batteries, so they had to.
Yeah, they talked about it in the broadcast too.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah, they mentioned it.
So in these in-car cameras that I.
Yeah, they mentioned the broadcast, and it's just he had to run to the battery store and get some new batteries. I don't know.
Should Austin Syndric be worried that NASCAR will look at his incident with Riley Herbst?
I don't. So I saw the video. Like, I don't think it was egregious, if that matters. Like, I don't think he kind of got bounced there. He was in the middle. I don't think so. I really don't.
You don't think that he hit Riley Herbst on purpose, or you don't think it's penalty worthy?
I don't think it's penalty worthy.
But do you think he hit him on purpose?
I don't know. I don't know. I need to see the data. I really would like to see this. I saw the video, and it's like he did make contact with the car to the inside, and then he came over and hit the 35. So I don't know if there's a cause and effect there, or that was Syndric turning right. I don't know. What do you think? Because
I mean, sure.
I'd like to see the data.
I don't really know if it's in question that he hit him on purpose. I think he definitely hit him on purpose. Now, is that a penalty worthy for, you know, a right rear kind of incident? I don't know about that. It was a short track. I don't know that he stayed in it long enough to like fully hook him. But it was really not, if that really truly was on purpose, that's not very good judgment considering he should have gotten suspended, you know, earlier this month. And NASCAR, I think, messed that call up by not suspending him. And now here, just a few weeks later, I bet NASCAR, I don't know that they'd come out and say this. I bet they're pissed because they're like, dang, you know, we chose not to suspend this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And now he does this again a few weeks later. He didn't learn. And maybe it's making them think we should have done this. I don't, to me, like it seemed pretty obvious that he came up and hit him from the in-car view, but
it was such a bang. It was so quick too. I just don't know.
No, not really. It seemed like he got pissed and hit him.
He get bounced. Okay. I have to go back and look.
He was in the middle of 3 wide. So okay. I'm sure he didn't like getting squeezed. There was contact, but I mean, I don't know. It looked like he hit him on purpose. Was he trying to spin him out though? I don't know. I don't know that you can, you know, penalize somebody for that, but I'm sure they're not thrilled. That
you're going to penalize. Anyway. It would be very, I don't know if the right would be ironic, but it would be very interesting if that earns a suspension, and then everything that happened in the Xfinity Series race ends up, it's like,
you know how it is though, like, because sometimes you talked about the Lane Riggs thing last year, how the Truck Series guys said, well, we've already talked to him about this, so that's why we're doing this penalty.
We gave you the one, and now we're not. Right. You basically effectively had your warning, yeah. So
that could be, you know, but I kind of have a hard time seeing them doing anything on this, but we will see. We'll see what happens there. Anyway, I cut you off. Were you making a further point about Penske?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. I mean, your point is well taken though. You had said that last week. I didn't believe you. I didn't want to agree with you that,
of course you don't.
Penske hasn't been, you know, dominant in the spring race. And I said, it doesn't really matter. Nothing's changed. It's the same tire. It's the same cars. We were just there a few months ago.
I swear this also happened at Phoenix too. You were like so convinced Penske was going to do their thing. And then I was right again. It's a long list.
I was wrong. I'm telling you, I was wrong. I'm admitting it. You don't need to rub it in. So man, a good day gone bad. Ty Gibbs. Well, at this point, I mean, by the way, he said he was going to kick Tyler Reddick's butt after the race, but I don't think that would have been a good one to. Tyler Reddick's kind of swole. Like he's built now. Like I don't think you want to fight Tyler Reddick personally, but anyway.
I mean, last time Ty was in altercation, he smartly kept his helmet on, so you never know.
Well, anyway, either way, bad deal for him. He ends up finishing 13th, but just seemingly can't catch a break because he was going to have a top 10. He had a good car. So I don't know. It just seems like another week for that. I looked too at Alex Bowman. Here we were talking about everything was kind of going right for him, and he had a loose wheel at one point on pit road, had to come back down, and was never able to regain his track position. Got lapped, finished 28th. Brad Keselowski, another disappointing day. Finishes a lap down. Keselowski still mired in 30th in points after 7 races. Just a miserable start. And then, William Byron just caught the caution at the wrong time. They were trying to run that stage in thirds and pitted, and the caution came out. ruined their strategy. He ends up finishing as the last car on the lead lap. So some big names that we would have thought could be up there, could be getting contention for top 10s in this race. Weren't able to do it today and walk away disappointed, in addition to the Syndric incident, as you talked about.
Yeah, the Ty Gibbs thing is the saving grace is they're having speed. I mean, they're having some bad luck right now. And you not much you can do when you get caught up in an accident at Martinsville sometimes, and that's the case today. At least they had a 13th place finish. At least they've had speed, and that will help you get out of this. And as part of Ty Gibbs working through this is like finding those things that, hey, we still finished 13th today. It wasn't what we wanted, but they have speed in their race car, and speed is a cure-all. And them going out and winning, pick a race in the next few weeks wouldn't really be a complete shock because Joe Gibbs Racing, you've got speed, etc. And I say this because this is where I look at Brad Keselowski. They haven't had speed in their race car a lot. It's not like they've had like a ton of bad luck and things aren't going away. Now I believe they also got trapped a lap down because of that caution, but they're not running well. They're just not. And I don't have the number in front of me, but their average running position isn't high. They're struggling right now. It's a search, and it's a thing where I would feel much more confident about the 54 pulling out of this and popping off a win at some point than I do the 6. And it's just to me, Brad is getting in a spot as this year goes along. Like, this season is going to get ugly in a hurry.
Jordan, anything else you want to talk about from this weekend, this race, before we move on to the good race poll?
Nothing immediately comes to mind.
Okay. Well, you won last week. You won Homestead, so good for you. You are now a 4-3 lead, according to Big Joe Wall. However, we're both continuing to be very close here. The total point differential, everything added up by the total misses we've had this year, you've missed by a total of 30.9, and I've missed by a total of 30.7, according to Big Joe Wall. The average we miss per week is 4.4, the exact same. And I've been within 5 points of the correct guess 6 times. You've been 5 times. So we're getting it very close. However, I think this is where we differ. I think this is the week where we go big directions, big differences, because I think this one is going to be pretty difficult. I'm having a hard time envisioning where this is going to land, what people are going to say about it. Do you have anything to write down with, or what are you going to do?
I came prepared, Jeff. Prepared. Got my notebook.
I've got my calculator. I've got my calculator here. So as I said, while you're thinking about it, the last 3 Martinsville spring races, none have been over 37%. But are people going to view this one that negatively? I don't know. There hasn't been a pretty, sort of snoozer race in a while. I don't think this was necessarily a snoozer. So yeah, this is a tough one for me. I don't know. I just typed a number. You have yours written down or no? Are you like frozen or something? Are you still thinking? Oh, you are frozen. Jordan's frozen. Wow. I thought he was just thinking for a long time. Well, mine is 46.7%. So, Jordan's now gone. Martinsville Wi-Fi, everybody. Bravo, Martinsville Wi-Fi. He made it this long. So it's me. I will get Jordan's guess for you, everybody. The chat on our YouTube live stream says Jordan DQ. He should be ineligible. He should just lose. He didn't want to make a pick. And now he probably is going to know my guess before he made his. And I'll just have to take his word for it. That he didn't know mine. This is lame. I feel like I'm being set up to lose here. Anyway, well, I don't think Jordan's coming back, so I will wrap it up here. We'll both be together in Darlington next week, and This is not going to be able to be confirmed until after the race, possibly. But there's possible that we may be joined by a third person on the teardown next week. But we won't know until after the race. So we could just pop on here and it could be the two of us like always in the room. There could be a third person with us. I'm not even going to say, I don't want to jinx it, but it could be very fun. So everybody, thanks as always for listening. And we will talk to you next time on the teardown. See you, everybody.